Welcome everyone to our Codex group meeting. It's May 21st, 2026. We're excited to have two great folks here, legal innovators who are sharing some important work with us. We have Viacheslav Rudenko, who is one of the participants in our recent LLM and law hackathon, who's building a tool that helps people with their O1A immigration petition. And then we have Julia Neusner, who's a colleague at Stanford Law School and also director of the Human Security Initiative. And she will present to us her human impact project. And so, yeah, excited to have you both. We had a little break from our regular meetings. I was on the road a lot, most recently in Brazil, where I had the pleasure to speak at I think it's the biggest legal tech event, the AB2L event. Anyone who hasn't been there yet, I recommend you go. It's been really great. Yeah, but great to pick up our series again, and with Vyacheslav and Julia. And I think we have Vyacheslav first on the list, so maybe we'll start with you, Vyacheslav. That be okay?
Yeah, sure, Roland. Thank you.
All righty. Okay. So over to you.
Cool, cool. First of all, thank you for having me, guys. It's a big pleasure, especially amazing hackathon showed the level of technical curiosity from a legal school. So I was like when I built this, it was only one place I would bring it up, and you guys are first. So let me just share my screen now, and we can start. So my name is Vyacheslav. Usually friends call me Slava, and I'm a AI product manager, and uh, I've worked for head of as a head of product for a venture fund. I'm Ukrainian. I served as a first responder, got injured, and moved to Ukraine to United States as a refugee. And it wasn't like actually anything planned. My company wasn't able to support me with relocation. Everything went sides. And I started discovering what are the legal paths for me to get the green card, which is like always was my interest. And I started like talking to friends, and I was living in a like a hacker house full of like amazing smart people. They gave me some contacts of agencies. I started talking to them, and I figured out that actually a final step is like they asked me to sign the deal like agreement with them to prepare O1 case and separately with a lawyer, which I was like, wow, that's interesting because I just needed an attorney at that point, and I was like, what are you guys like building or doing? And while like talking to bunch of them, I figured out that agency bundle, they explain it as preparing the case and helping with publications and helping with sometimes you don't know English well, and their check can be up to 35Ks. And when I met like good attorneys that work on immigration cases, most of their fees will vary from 6 to 12. So basically, where is this 10K cap coming from? It's from manual work, Kazarian to staff verification and stuff like that. So, and knowing that Stanford CodeX is actually up for bringing like justice and making the attorneys more available for people like me who never like plan to immigrate and don't have actually like spare 10Ks to to throw away. I started thinking, okay, where do those agencies actually know what should I build? And by talking to Claude, I figured it out that there is a public cases like AAO precedents where I can get the actual like people who similar to me and Kazarian to steps and UCIS. But when I started crafting it, everything went sides. So we figured, and because it actually were less by the book thing. So I thought, okay, there is a live UCIS agents who probably got retired, and they describing some of their work, which is not private, about how they th see the problem. And I use first principles and their point of view to create my own case and build up a Claude skill because Claude is actually really good in legal things, and to remove this like third party between me and attorney. So using this tool, it's really easy to use and really easy to install and really easy to pass to the attorney to review. And it's not removing attorney at all. So let me show you how I went through this process. And the main question I came here is actually, does it make sense to like publish it and open source? Because my point of view is there is so many talented people that never thought about moving or immigration or having that, but we were forced to have with the world things we having right now and don't have spare money so they can use it for example, to prepare their case, or even attorneys who don't have time and like capacity to work on the case, but can file and help with filing. So that can work, help being helpful for both of the ways. Of course, as you know, LLM works like with real data. So I prepared this something that will look really similar to what works with Claude Code, just to visualize everything. So I already prepared my petitional profile and input, which is like fully true, and it's actually goes through all 9 diagnostic phases. Everything you see is more animation style, but totally like maps what's going on with Claude. If you want to ask the Claude with all the skills they have and benchmark there, it's gonna be, I will show you that. So what we are going through is we took the intake, scored that against all the criteria, 8 criteria, created and find AAO cases, figure out which cases are actually a good fit for me, and then the tool forms the whole legal case. Real case to generate will take up to like 15 to 16 minutes, so that's why I showed as animation. But now I will present real thing here. So why it's good? First, it's always explain the whole reality check here. So it shows if the person, me, uh, actually can get the visa and what are the chances, and then unfolds why. So the second phase, as I mentioned before, is a mental model of UCIS agent and how it looks through, even with the timings for each of the content we have here, with highlighting really important things I need to tackle. For example, I was building open source tool for a venture fund, and to make it a real significant thing, it recommends me to avoid RFE risks, to have good to file it with um, letters and to get review by professionals from the field, right? And we can go through each of that, but it's not the most interesting thing. Here we have like a decision flow and how the officer will actually look at that. Uh, Now we are going to the 5 criteria with status. where I'm going with all my details, where should I focus to build or just skip? Why? Because it choose something that is low to medium effort and has a low time. So as I mentioned, everyone, it's good if you're a Nobel Prize winner. You actually can through all the docs and it work. But for example, if I was a mentor for VC-baked startups, and this is not actually a judging thing. So it's highlights really well how I need to turn that and show for and red flag things like Stevie and Globy, which should be removed because it's red flag already. And every criteria upstreams is proved by AAO patterns, which are uh, tested against hallucination through direct linkage. Even through the process of providing the case, it tested again workers who actually do their cases through venture fund. So it's totally personalized to me, and that's I really liked. So and as I mentioned, every claim has its own red flags or green flags and framing strategy, which I can follow and fix before coming to attorney. So they have everything prepared and can verify later on. Uh, I think the whole case is really helpful, and every time I need to see what's going on with my current stage, I can go to Claude and ask like, hey, what is the status? Where are we going? And what's my next best thing to do before talking to a lawyer? And as I would say, there is the main what I want to highlight is that every step is actually highlighted as thing that need to be verified by lawyer, and the main, I would say, action point is to get uh, experienced lawyer in immigration to like really have to work on the full case. So it's again not like something that we want to remove lawyers. It's something that will help both sides to save money in time and prepare cases that wouldn't take long in manual work. And I want to make it open source, and but I don't have any legal experience. So that's why I'm here and I'm ready to be crushed with your questions, and would love to get some partners out this session to verify that and maybe to develop it further.
Okay,
Thank
great, Slava. Thank you so much for the presentation. Very interesting. So talk a little bit more about, what kind of, framework or guardrails you have created here that that guides, Claude,
you.
and makes this sort of differentiated from like going directly to Claude and prompt Claude and say, hey, Claude, help me pull together the materials for my O1A petition. What are the steps I should take? What is it that you added above on top
The
of that?
typical,
And
yeah.
then explain a little bit the AAOs. I don't know what that is. Those are like different pathways towards a O1A, like a specific kind of different approaches one can take, and it will sort of nudge you towards one particular approach after having assessed your current background and accomplishments.
Right. Thank you. So, first question is the whole what's the difference between just typical Claude and what I've built is Actually, just give me a moment. I will show you the whole thing. Just give me a quick pass. So, okay, it doesn't matter. Let The first and foremost is knowledge base. We have here as a big pile of playbooks, which are which been generated and created from open data. And as you mentioned, AAO is something that there is a public cases. So when attorney filed the case and it's been rejected, it can be I forgot the word. So
Appealed?
huh?
You can appeal the case, or
Yeah. You can appeal the case, and if this goes public, and the comments about why it was rejected and how later it was appealed are public. So what the tool do is goes and ask, like for example, I have real friend who came here in 2012, whose name is Mark, and he was product manager at AI, and he was rejected. And I found how that this tool is actually took this case and said like, hey, you cannot like be a part, don't be a part of a Forbes council. It's compromise. It's just pay thing. But the Mark was collecting the group of PMs and teaching them and recorded them. And this is a legit thing. So if you can build something around that and starting like teaching people, that will work. So this is AAO, and this is what differs me from Claude. And also the mindset. The skill works as a UCIS agent scanning through the whole thing because this is important. Not how I see my case, but how they will read it. And
so okay,
the
so you created like almost a skill that tries to replicate the persona of USCIS
agent, right,
agent. Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
right. It's
And
it's a cascade of skills, and all the claims is taken from this uh, open public cases which were appealed, right?
interesting. Okay, so that's sort of like an important knowledge base that you would assume that an immigration officer will use also to, inform their decisions.
Right. So when I was so the main starting point isn't, that's why the main starting point isn't the criteria, but the viewpoint. Give me a sec. And the the view, yeah, here we go. So what the officer sees when they open your petition, and every point is like tied to what is going on. And I found that publicly available because they're like go retire it, they start talking about that on podcasts. So I was like generating the whole data from that, and it stays in this skill, so you can
Interesting.
get it. Yeah. And also when we launch the skill, it doesn't have to like have this big data base. There is another skill which is a deep research skill that goes directly to those places and look for updated cases or updated information from agents to see if there's something more relevant for today about your skill than we have in the database, and it updates that, and it keeps uh, working only with them, so you save the number of tokens, because if we will use all the cases, it will be disaster for the money. No no reason to spend so much.
Okay. So Abid has a question. He's asking, is this a single Claude prompt with a structured output, or do you have an actual evaluation loop, something that catches a hallucinated citation or misclassified criterion before the package goes out? And then
Right.
how do you handle a case where the evidence doesn't actually meet any of the 8 criteria? Does the system tell the petitioner that, or does it find a way to fit the evidence anyway?
No. So two questions. First is if I understood the question right. So every time we go to I tested it first for evaluation loop. I tested it by myself through throwing in that things like, hey, do you think we can validate this with Max Antonov case from that? And he was just responding, no, it's impossible. You can throw some like questions in chat. I can try to ask it through Claude, but it's actually verifies if there is any existing case like that because he is actually restricted for taking anything that he cannot citate from the real cases. So it's always hallucination blocked. And I did some manual test by myself, and I showed that to a few of my friends who are working on that. So it's just having the guardrails and on a level of the orchestration skill, and there is a verification skill between each respond. The second question was if there is no so this is if there is person that doesn't fit any of the criteria, it will show it as it is. So it's prompted to be critical, not supportive, unfortunately, but which is actually better for the client because if he knows that this is not the real thing, it will just show what in the future he can do, but he will not probably say that this case is not the best for him and advise to talk to a lawyer to see any other way to find out other ways to legalize. So I made it through to make sure that I don't want to pay because any agency out there, they say, yeah, you can get the visa. Yeah, just pay the money. So this tool is exactly was for that to say me, this is a legit pass or not.
Got it. Okay. Monica is asking what happens to user data after it's uploaded.
Excuse me, what again?
What happens to the data of the users after they
Uh-huh.
upload that data?
So everything runs on your computer. Of course, as you can see when you start the skill and you plug it from. To start working with that, it's just the GitHub. You just paste it in your skill in your Claude, and it will start interviewing you and saving all the data on your computer. So you don't put it publicly nowhere. But yeah, to work with LLM, it's talking to Claude to build the case and stuff like that. So any of the data being stored on in cloud. That's why I choose this approach with against SaaS because I don't want to mess around with all the issues with data. You own the data it's on your desktop. That's it. Like nothing is shared anywhere. You can share
Cool.
it only with your lawyer if you want.
Abid's asking, are you using the Claude API in Codex?
Am I using Claude
Because I think you
API?
probably saw like on the site here somewhere it said Codex, and but you're using
Oh, it's a Claude API. So for now it's just a subscription. I can move it to API. It's not a problem. I don't API here would be overkill, I would say, because not all people know how to use API and connect that. This one is easier. But for comparison of Claude and Codex, Claude showed the better results on legal cases. They recently provided even the separate Claude for legal usage. So I took it as a main source and then tested with Claude with ChatGPT. It showed less structured answers, and I gave it up. So it's fully Anthropic focused.
cool. So you talked a little bit already about what your plans are for this. it's at the moment it's like an open source thing. Anyone can use it, but you want to keep working on it and refining it, and maybe create a business around it, or like what are your aspirations?
Yeah, so my aspiration is it's actually not open sourced. It's on a private. I mean, the folder is. So I was
Oh, I see.
this. Yeah, so I really needed someone who can like assist me and say if it's something worth working on, and can we give more people who has like less budget and like lost right now in the process. They don't know why agencies work on that, why lawyers, but and or to give this opportunity, because I really know while living in a hackathon house, I saw so many talented people just doing that by themselves and collect cases by themselves. But if they know that the price can be reduced for 10,000 and have a good lawyer and they still together and just open source it, I would be happiest person in the world. So more people can like feel less stressed. But I don't want, I feel that first I need someone to validate that this is actually working and brings the value for the both sides. I talked to my friends from Hacker House. They said this is really looking good, but we need someone who is a immigration lawyer or someone who can
Yeah.
like tell that this is worth
So I
the
don't know if
effort.
we have any immigration lawyers in the group today, but we certainly have immigration lawyers and some immigration uh, technology innovators who've been in that space for a long time in our wider community, and I'm happy to kind of connect you up with some of those folks. And maybe if you could put your contact information in the chat now or on the screen, that if people wanted to follow up with more questions or any suggestions they may have for you, I think that'd be great. But yeah, this is cool. I mean, it seems to me that um, you know, I went through my green card application a long time ago, and at the time, I think things were still easier than they are today. But yeah, this was an enormous kind of paper gathering process. It was all handled by one immigration lawyer. I wasn't aware that there are like agencies that like are out there that help build your case and so on. And it seems like a good kind of use case for how you could use AI and agentic AI to build your case and to map your story into the categories that seem to kind of resonate with those individuals who make those decisions, right? So I think it seems like especially given the cost savings that you could accomplish, to me it seems like a useful thing to do. And since you're surrounded by people who are in similar situations, it's good, so you have like kind of your natural test environment there, and you can like roll it out and try things out with them. But I'm happy to try to connect you up with some people I know. But we really appreciate you sharing. Was this your hackathon project? You said this was your.
No, no, no.
It was
I
a
was,
different.
yeah, it was different. I was
Yes.
working on, mitigation of interest, conflict of interest using AI.
Got it. Okay, well, cool. It is a cool project, and we appreciate you joining us and sharing it with our group. And yeah, please put your contact info in the chat so folks could reach out to you directly. And we're sort of at the point where we have to turn over to Julia now. But thank you, Vyacheslav, on behalf of everyone. I give you a round of applause. And yeah, thank you again. And Julia, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to say a few things about Slava's project, this is so impressive. And I've worked on immigration policy and like sort of tangentially as an immigration lawyer. So I can say for like this threshold question of do I have a good case for this type of relief, just to be able to give people some clarity around that without having to speak to without having to speak to an attorney about that is super valuable. And I would just suggest, like, I think it's really cool that you incorporated the remarks from the USCIS officers from the podcast, and you might want to actually reach out to those officers, or other, be connected with like other like retired USCIS or fired ones, because there's a bunch of those now, who might be willing to like review what you built here and give more insight. And I can email you about this, but Amelie Vavratsky is an alum of the MIP program here, and she runs a startup called Formally that helps people seeking immigration benefits navigate these different systems, and she might be a good person to connect to. So
That's a great point. Yeah, Amelie actually is a former Codex fellow, so
oh, is she? Yeah, okay,
she's
that makes sense.
she's a friend of Codex. So this is a great idea.
Yeah, but that's super impressive. Thanks for sharing. Um, so my name's Julia Neusner. I am a 2020 graduate of Stanford Law School and the Master of International Policy program here. And since graduating, I've been working in refugee protection and advocacy for immigrants' rights nonprofits, mostly focused on looking at the impact of U.S. policies on people seeking protection at the border. So I've been in research roles primarily. My main project when I graduated law school was tracking kidnappings of migrants and asylum seekers turned away from protection at the US border. And to do that, I had a big spreadsheet. I was just and Google alerts on Spanish, on news media from El Salvador, Honduras, places where folks where that might have reported people from those countries going missing en route to the U.S. border, Mexican news media, U.S. news media, social media, and then I was also interviewing lawyers and service providers along the border, and then traveling to the border myself and going into shelters, asking people if they've attempted to seek U.S. protection, if they were turned away, and whether they've been kidnapped. And my team and I at Human Rights First tracked more than 13,000 kidnappings and other violent attacks against folks turned away from protection. At that point, it was under the Title 42 border closures. And it was very useful for advocacy, that work that we did. It was cited in federal litigation challenging this policy. It was reported widely by major news media. So I share that background about my work and what I've done because it kind of inspired this project. So it's called the Human Impact Project. Since the Trump administration has increased enforcement operations around the country, I've just been overwhelmed by the barrage of news I've been receiving through different listservs that I'm on with immigration attorneys, social media. And I realized that nobody was tracking all of it in one place. So I created this tool to do that. And I also share my background to to clarify that I have very little to no technical expertise. I built this tool using Claude Code. So forgive me if I don't, if my language, if I use amateur language to describe, what's happening here, because I'm honestly blown away by the capabilities of this technology. But I had this idea for a really long time, had been speaking with engineers about building it, and then somebody told me about vibe coding, and I realized I could build it myself. So so I'm excited to share it with you, and I will share it now. Okay. So this is the website. I have this tool that is scraping multiple corners of the internet, including Court Listener, which is an open source database of ongoing litigation and completed litigation. Um, Different news websites, GoFundMe, where people whose loved ones have been detained or deported, or otherwise are seeking financial assistance, social media, many different sources to try to bring together reports of immigration enforcement incidents, which I'm defining as officer use of force, detainments, death related to enforcement, deportations, third country deportations, And then these incident types get a bit more broad, but I've been refining it with Claude to know what types of incidents are relevant for this tracker. But the vast majority are detainments, so arrests on the street, arrests in people's homes, and the other raids and the consequences that fall from those. So the first this project started with me putting the first 500 incidents into a spreadsheet, pulling out manually the headlines, the summaries, and then these different tags. So types of people impacted, different incident types. And then I fed that into Claude to kind of show it what I was looking for and how to categorize different things, and built it from there into a database with close to 2,500 incidents. Um, so they are geolocated, so they're visualized here on the map. If we want to see what's happening in St. Louis, we can just click here. A Missouri man deported to the Netherlands. Local police visit a school to ask about what's happening there. Cameroonian asylum seeker detained during routine check-in. So that's one way you can engage with it. I think the more it's also displays each incident in reverse chronological order. So if we hold on, let me have to clear the filters. If we want to see like what's been going on most recently, these are all the events from yesterday, and just stay up to date with what's happening. So I'll just show you what it looks like, kind of how it works. It runs a daily scraper of news, and then I go in every morning and review incidents before they are added. If an incident covering the same individual or the same event is added, it recognizes that and then combines it with previous coverage of that incident, merges it, synthesizes a summary based on the new updates, and generates a timeline. So it has recognized that these newly scraped incidents from the 20s, I'm sorry, from the 20th of May, are already in the database. So it's going to update this story about the 15-year-old guy detained by the Coast Guard on a fishing trip with his father. So we can merge those. And then same with this mother detained and separated from her son, who's a high school senior. So that'll merge and update existing coverage. And then all of these that are pending review, I go through, make sure that the tags that Claude came up with are accurate, and then I'll approve them if I think they're ready to go. So then just to show you what it looks like when new coverage of an existing incident is merged. Here's one example. An Austin high school senior was detained. Later, a federal judge ordered his release. So this initially came into the database with coverage of the detention, and then when the judge ordered him released, then that updated the event, and it moves it to whatever the most recent date of the update is. And also, as these different sources are getting fed into the database, they are automatically being archived. So the first like avenue towards archiving it is with Wayback Machine, the like Internet Archive. If that fails, it just pulls the text from it, which is what you see here. Because some websites have security settings that don't allow them to be archived with Wayback Machine. And then for the social media, we have it archiving the whole videos. So like a lot of what's in here is like video that people took on the street of officer use of force on the street that may get deleted later. So this is going to keep a database, keep an archive of all of those videos that go in through Instagram. And then so as a researcher, a lawyer, researcher, advocate, policy advocate in these nonprofits, I just wanted to build something that would be really useful for me, because we were often putting out reports about how people of specific groups were impacted, to help understand whether there was opportunities for litigation, for class actions. So here we can easily see like what's happening to DACA people with DACA protection. And so we can easily go through, see like all of the recent stories of people with DACA who are being detained. Same with folks who are legal permanent residents or green card holders, and if there's and we can see what types of patterns might emerge, what types of patterns might emerge by geographic location. Like these are all of the places where people with legal permanent residence or where incidents have been reported among folks with legal LPR status or green cards. Uh, so and it's also navigable by country of origin. So this can be a useful tool for people from a particular country who want to understand what enforcement looks like for folks from that country within a certain region, and what and a good tool for seeing what types of patterns might emerge across the country geographically as well. So there are, every day I keep on coming up with like new things to track. So I just added denaturalization because the administration put out a press release on folks that they had successfully denaturalized last week, which brings me to the point that this is intended to be like a nonpartisan, non-political project. We're just simply documenting what's happening. I was careful about the language I was using to make it to not suggest that we were doing anything other than presenting the facts as they are publicly reported. Um, so and that means that we're also capturing information that the administration puts out about enforcement. So here's an example. This was something DHS put out yesterday about an undocumented man from Cuba with prior felony convictions for drug trafficking that ICE arrested. And DHS is often putting out these types of press statements to try to show the world, that they are arresting criminals. So all of that is captured in this database. Um, I would eventually there's a lot of work to be done on this on simply this project of tracking litigation and news, and in many cases it combines if we get, for example, like court documents from Court Listener, it will also find here's a good example. We got this documents from Court Listener Kira Zapata versus Acuna about a Colombian torture survivor deported to the Congo, who has a convention against torture protections, as well as a whole bunch of sources, news coverage on that incident. And here we have a synthesis of what we learned from the litigation as well as from the news coverage. So there's a lot of work to be done on this, and specifically, I don't really like. I have a couple of like recent graduates who are helping me curate this and review the different incidents for and tag them appropriately. We are trying to avoid only social media having cases that don't have more than one corroborating source, and I've marked those with this little pink exclamation point. Um, and often like things might come through social media and then it takes a little while for like news coverage to catch up. So I can go back in and if I want to try to find, sometimes after a few days I'll go find sources and then it'll like scrape the internet. So there's still nothing on this. It might be because the language is so vague against this about this particular incident, but sometimes I'll find corroborating coverage. But which is all to say, like I don't have a process right now for verifying that all of these incidents are true or real. I'm still debating whether or not that's something I need to be responsible for doing here. I like this is, we're synthesizing publicly reported things. We can, I was thinking about maybe like rating different like sources by their dependability, if it's, a news source with comprehensive fact checking or not. But any like ideas or concerns around that would be welcome. And then I'm also just like I think there's a lot of different potential applications for like legal accountability. A friend of mine who's an immigration attorney told me that she's working on a lot of habeas petitions and just being able to look at if she has somebody detained in Adelanto, we can like see right away uh, all of the ways that all of the ways that Adelanto has been reported about here about inhumane conditions. And then she has like a wealth of information to cite in her habeas petition about why a person with a particular medical condition, for instance, shouldn't be detained there because of these reports of lack of inadequate care. So, yeah, I guess I would love to hear from all of you about what concerns you have about this project, potential ways to expand it, um, and other and like other potential legal applications. And I'll also mention that that this is I've been like working part-time. I have no funding for this. I've just been like doing it on the side with my own kind of like self-funding it. And I recently got 501(c)(3) exemption for my nonprofit and am trying to I'm trying to figure out like where and how to get funding. I'm new to that. And once I do, I'll be able to really build this and make it better. And what I would like to eventually do is supplement this with first person testimony in the same type of mixed methods approach I had with the kidnapping reporting I mentioned earlier, where I was going into shelters and speaking to people and getting firsthand testimony about their experiences. Because here, I mean, we're only getting a small slice of what's happening, and we're getting a slice of folks who have spoken to lawyers, who have filed litigation, who have shared their story with journalists. And there's so many other people whose stories we'll never hear, or whose stories we might be able to hear if we go into the shelters or the communities where they've been deported to and collect their testimony. So I'd like to build that into this eventually, and that'll also be a way to find potential plaintiffs for litigation, to find potential due process violations in the course of deportations, abuses in detention or in the deportation process that we might not know about, and that we can kind of see within this broader landscape of publicly reported information to have use this tool to help analyze a way forward. So thank you so much. Happy to take your question.
Awesome. Thank you, Julia. This is great. So Abid is asking, how do you connect and collate disparate sources using Claude for this project? Excellent presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so what happens is sometimes I will submit a URL, that directly to the to whatever the intake process. Forgive me for not knowing the vocabulary. And as part of that process, Claude runs through a service called EXA that scans the internet for additional coverage of the same incident. And it's taken a lot of refining for me to get EXA to get that right, but it does a pretty good job now. I mean, especially if an individual is named in the coverage of finding other sources, and then Claude reads those sources, generates a summary based on all of them. So, if one of the sources is about a kid getting taken off the street, another source is about how he suffered in detention, and another source about a judge ordering his release, all of those will appear in the same incident, and it'll generate a timeline. And then, like what I showed you before, as new incidents get either scraped or added by me, Claude will recognize if it already exists in the database, and then show me the update and ask, confirm that I want to add it to an existing incident, and then it'll just update it that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that answered the question. So my so similarly, how do you? I mean, what sort of like what tags are you using, to identify cases that are relevant for coverage? I think you see what I mean. It's like what do you include and what do you not include?
So pretty much it's pretty much any story of any detainment by ICE of anybody in the country is what this is capturing.
Okay.
And of course, it's not going to be comprehensive, because it's only going to capture cases in which there is news coverage or litigation, or social media coverage. Because it's called the Human Impact Project because I want to illuminate the impacts beyond the person. I certainly want to tell this, want the stories come to light of those directly affected, but also, we're scanning GoFundMe because we want to know what's happening to families too, and what's happening to some of these are, beloved restaurant has to close because its owner was, taken by ICE. So stories of ICE detaining people and their impact
Got it.
is what it's after. But I think because I found the first 500 incidents myself, kind of based on a gut feeling of what I felt was important from having like worked on this stuff for a while. I think I pretty much told Claude to like look for stories like these, and then we've been kind of refining what's appropriate to go in here.
Got it. And you mentioned that the Wayback When machine doesn't always help you archive things. So then what do you archive those things that you can't use the Wayback When machine with? How does that work? You have
It's
your own
it
service?
goes to a service called R2, which I can't
Oh,
remember what it's hosted on. Um, Cloudflare, does that sound right? Sorry, there's just
yeah.
been so
Yeah.
many.
I was just curious.
It's hosted on like every time I have an idea with Claude Code, it says you can integrate this other service, and so it's so both the Instagram archives, because Wayback Machine can't handle those, and the text ones go through a service called R2, which is hosted on some cloud platform that I will have to look up.
Okay. And Slava is saying, I was asking whether you're using some AI generated text, text detection, which can, if it's AI generated text, that might be a sign that it's fabricated. It's fabricated news.
That's a good idea. I should work that into here, but I will say, having now spent, because often the first place these incidents show up is social media. So so my Instagram algorithm has now only shows me ICE stuff. So I've spent a lot of time
Huh.
scrolling through that, and I can recognize when like these captions are AI generated, and so many of them are, even for the real stories.
Hmm.
Just because it seems like that that's what's
That's
happening a lot. So I think that would be a good, like, we should flag the ones that are AI generated for extra review. I think that's a really good idea, with the caveat that a lot of AI generated stuff is covering real events.
Yeah. And you said, so, okay, so this is already, I think, a super useful system, and it's amazing how you built that, and like just, kind of all the thought you've put into that. I think you also expressed some interest in, like, expanding it, into other areas. What do you think would be some sort of adjacent problems that you could tackle in a similar way?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think this methodology could apply for for like maybe other areas of the law, like evictions, like
Uh-huh.
just like scanning the news for or like scanning news and litigation, and organizing it in a coherent way, uh like maybe like environmental issues. I uh I think like this like type of database, and the like use of Claude with all of these integrated services, EXA and everything else in it, to index all these things, could be useful for a lot of different applications. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, one thing, and you're doing this a little bit already, but I thought about that in sort of, in especially sort of in an environmental law kind of context. It'd be interesting to overlay other kind of, data with the legal data, right? Like, just adding a map to see, on which Home Depots in the Bay Area do you see the most kind of ICE enforcement action or something like that, right? That kind of makes it just all the more kind of tangible for people, I think, and so I think, sometimes that's really interesting to kind of, visualize legal information in a way that makes it, brings it closer to people in a sense. But yeah, you're already you have a map there, and then you're showing that, and that's, I think that adds another dimension.
Yeah, but that's a good idea, and it's interesting that you bring up Home Depot, because I've just been thinking about different ways I could report out this information, like maybe like mini reports on different topics, and enforcement at Home Depot or like day labor sites and what that looks like. I think would be an interesting one. Or like there's a lot of stories in here, and one of the ways you can filter the information is like by LGBTQ plus individuals, and like how trans folks are being treated in detention. So there's a lot of like mini like topical reports that could be written that could be useful for advocacy, and also hopefully litigation too.
Yeah. So Monica is saying, a great project, Julia. I was wondering whether your goal is to merely document these cases, or have you perhaps considered eventually matching affected individuals with pro bono legal counsel?
That's a great idea. I mean, I think like at like the like least I hope I can do is document things, but I would really like this to have to be able to precipitate some tangible relief for at least some people. So yeah, to the extent there are folks whose cases are reported by maybe smaller news media or by social media, by GoFundMe, that could be connected with pro bono counsel, that would be fantastic. I was thinking more that like identifying patterns in types of abuses people suffer, or rights violations across different detention centers or different geographical areas, or countries of origin, could serve as the basis of litigation, and like that could be informative for lawyers. But I hadn't thought so much about just matching people with pro bono counsel who could take on their cases. So thanks for that suggestion.
Cool. Well, Julia, if so, Abid, I think send a link of like some website that's tracking ICE activities in different areas, and I think we're pretty much at the end of our time. But if folks wanted to reach you, what's a good way to get in contact?
I can put my email in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Julia@org.
All right. Well, Julia, thank you so much. This is amazing, and both of you, Slava and Julia, really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your important work with our Codex group here. And please keep us posted. Folks in the group, thank you for joining us today. I will send out an announcement for our next meeting, maybe next week, but certainly on June 4th. Just keep an eye out for my email. Good to see you all. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And see you next time.